Welcome, everyone. My name is Stuart True. I'm the trade campaigner with the Council of Canadians. Thank you for being able to make the time to come out and hear this dispatch from Peru. I'm not actually in Peru right now. I'm in Hamilton, Ontario, but we have an amazing list of trade activists in Peru, who you can probably see in the other room there with Mike, ready to tell you guys what's been going on this week. I see they're waving. So maybe just briefly introduce them right now. I know they'll introduce themselves again when it comes time to speak. Um, the idea of this gathering was a chance to kind of tap people in around the world to what's going on in TPP right now, the 17th round of negotiations on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's become a 12-country negotiation, but of course there's only 11 right now, with Japan joining in the next round in July. But there's quite a bit of activity going on, quite a bit of grassroots resistance and mobilizing happening right now in Lima. And so this was an opportunity to bring some of that to the rest of the world, and also hear about some of the details of what they're discussing behind closed doors in the TPP. I want to thank some of the organizations that made this possible. So as well as the Council of Canadians, special thanks to the TPP Ex-Border Network, the Public Citizen, International Brotherhood of Teamsters, Citizens Trade Campaign, the Washington Fair Trade Coalition, and Sierra Club US. And I think a special thanks to Public Citizen for helping to gather the people in Lima today, because it was a little hectic to begin with, figuring out who we were able to get to speak, but I think it came together really well. So some of the speakers you'll hear, and again, they'll be introduced again in a moment, but we have Mike Dolan, you'll see there, from the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. He's a veteran political organizer and former labor lawyer. We have Emma Gomez from the Peruvian civil society group Cooperacione. They work on extractive industries and human rights in Peru. We have Melinda St. Louis and Peter Meyerduck from Public Citizen. We have Dr. Eduardo Bianco, who's a cardiologist from Uruguay. And we have Miguel Morachimo from, don't know, forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, but Hyperderecho, a Peruvian Internet Freedom Organization, as well as Yorgos Altinzis from the International Trade Union Confederation. And then I believe Mike's going to wrap things up again at the very end. So I think I'll leave it there and toss it over to you, Mike, if that's okay. And then I'm going to disappear so that we just see you guys on the screen. One more thing I'll say, though, before we get started is you'll see that there's a chat. You'll notice probably that your microphones aren't turned on and your cameras aren't turned on. This is just to make sure that we save the bandwidth and that we don't have any problems with the internet connection. There is a bit of a delay, but you probably won't notice it once people get started. And finally, if you do have questions, I'm going to be monitoring the chat section there, but just fire off questions into the chat section and we can answer those at the end, or answer them as people feel like answering them as their presentations go. So thanks very much, everyone, for joining, and thanks to everyone in the room in Lima as well.
And thank you very much, Stuart, with the Council of Canadians, for helping set this up. It was Stuart's idea in the first place, and maybe this will become a regular feature of our civil society mobilizations as we track these and other trade negotiations. First of all, just a point of or information. Yorgos and Miguel, Peter, is this right? We're not downstairs, and we're not sure if they'll be joining us. But so you all know, welcome to Lima. We're live in Lima right now at the Marriott Hotel, where the negotiations are going on right now, 5 floors below this room, in the Marriott. Thank you. And I want to thank actually all the activists who are here with us to find out what's been going on. Obviously, the support of all the civil society groups in all of the TPP countries back home now are crucial to what will be our ultimate success. Hello? Yeah, so you're downstairs? Okay, Yorgos, Peter's going to come get you now. Can you hear me? All right, that's great. That was Yorgos. and he's going to come on up, and that's good that he'll be with us. But anyway, to all the civil society activists at home on this fight, obviously your activism and engagement is as important as our presence here in Lima. So thank you very much. I'm as you know, as Stuart mentioned, there's now 12 countries that are looking at this. The most recent addition is Japan. Japan is not here yet. They'll be joining the negotiations in July, and I believe it's Malaysia. Is that right, where we think it's going to be? In Malaysia, so stay tuned, we'll be there. But as well, of course, the United States and our NAFTA partners in Mexico and in Canada, Chile and Peru, New Zealand and Australia, Brunei, Vietnam, Singapore, and Malaysia are the dozen countries in these negotiations. It would be great if there were, activists from all of the different countries. Several of them are represented here. And anyway, to all of you who are out there, before I turn it over to Emma Gomez, who will introduce herself and come sit in this seat, I say thank you all to all the activists who are out there and being part of this larger fair trade movement. And Emma, who was out with us at the protest today, just outside in front, is going to be able to give some perspective locally. Hi, Emma. Have a seat.
Hi, how are you? I'm Emma Gomez from Cooperación. We work in mining zone defending the rights of communities, and we are related to the TPP subject about what really worried about the TPP, because now we are taking front of a suit arbitration against Doran case. Doran is a big company in Peru who has worked in La Oroya and who has pollute and affect health rights of people in La Oroya. And beside that, they decide to use the investment chapter of the free trade agreement with USA, and they take Peru to a millionaire arbitration case, and they are hoping to have $800 million of indemnization. So that shows that investment rules in this type of agreements are affected countries like Peru, who are now trying to put strict rules to companies who work in our country. And that shows that these rules have to change. No, it shows that we are really vulnerable to this type of agreements, because we are trying to protect people's rights, and now we have to take front of this type of arbitration. So that's the big reason we are here, and that we were in the protest, and they are trying to look for the investment chapter and to change the rules about that. I don't know if I continue or
if we will watch to see if any questions come up, which is, I think, how, if we see any, over the course of the whole webinar. And for right now, though, I think maybe we'll wait for questions. And Melinda, if you would like to talk a little bit about the transparency issues. Okay. Thanks, Emma, and we'll just wait for questions. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I wanted to let everyone see I'm wearing the neat t-shirts that our Peruvian partners had at the protest. It says, "Todos podemos perder." We could all lose, TPP. And the theme of the protest included, this is a gas mask for representing the people of La Oroya who have had terrible pollution in their communities due to foreign investors. The mouths are being covered over. That's about freedom of speech and the concern around internet issues and patients' rights and with the mask. It was a very lively protest outside with well over 100 people came together. You can see some of the pictures there. I was very moved, particularly. There were people who came from La Oroya, which is it's at least 5 hours from Lima, to come to be here and to witness. There was a child there who has been affected by the lead contamination. There's more than 99% of the children in the community have been have very high levels of lead in their bloodstream due to the terrible pollution of this metal smelter that has actually that is now suing the Peruvian government for $800 million. It's incredible, and to hear the stories and that these people brought was quite moving, and the fact that they felt like they wanted to come to this very posh hotel outside where they're not allowed to come in, not allowed to hear what's actually being negotiated in their name. It was very moving. I just wanted to say a couple words about what it's like to come to negotiations like this. We have been calling for the past 3 years. This is the 17th round of negotiations, and we've been calling for the texts of the negotiations to be released so that the public can actually know what is being negotiated in our names. That has been completely off the table, and in fact, we know that the negotiators have signed an agreement that they won't allow the text to be released until 4 years after the negotiations are complete. The negotiating text, which is actually unprecedented in a level of secrecy. We've been the people that have mobilized here in Peru have wanted to have a presence, make sure the negotiators saw them when they were coming out on their lunch break, and to hear that is very important for us to have access to those texts, particularly because also among the stakeholders here are many of the large corporations that stand to benefit from the TPP and some of the extreme investor rules and other rules, and over 600 of them actually there's 600 trade advisors to the United States who have access to the text, who can opine, and the vast majority, almost all of them, are corporate advisors, and so to see the contrast between that level of access and the public that is locked out and does not know what's going to be happening, that's what makes us particularly worried about what the results of the agreement will be. More of the same of a NAFTA model that has been devastating both in developed countries as well as developing countries.
Dr. Bianco is Eduardo Bianco. Will introduce himself.
Yeah.
Now? Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Eduardo Bianco from Uruguay, South America, and I'm a medical cardiologist involved in tobacco control, and now I'm representing Action on Smoking and Health of the United States, and my interest for being here mainly is to protect, to help to protect people from the tobacco industry interference and from the tobacco epidemic. And we think that any kind of trade negotiation will increase the sales of a product that is really a danger for human beings. It kills half of the consumer, is highly addictive as high as cocaine or heroin, and most of the consumers start using that product before 18 when they have the skill for taking decisions. So a unique product like that should be treated in a different way to protect health. So the problem is that any kind of trade treaty will increase, absolutely, will increase sales, and for sure to increase damage, health damage, life that are going to be lost, and that will have impact, economic impact, but also in the country's development. Particularly, I'm here because I'm from Uruguay, and Uruguay is now under attack from a multinational tobacco company, Philip Morris, because of implementing his obligation under WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, that is the first international treaty on health related to tobacco control, and because of the sovereign right to protect people through tobacco control, and because Uruguay has been succeeded with this tobacco control measure, Philip Morris attacked through an international arbitration process using the International Center for Investment Disputes from the World Bank. I don't remember exactly the name, but it's quite similar to that. And so using this, using a bilateral investment treaty between Switzerland and Uruguay from the 90s, that was started to the negotiation, they are now trying they try to set back the measure first, promoting a negotiation, but hopefully, fortunately, Uruguayan government decided to face the challenge, but they scared the government through the media, sending the message that Uruguay will have to pay for, I don't know the word for, to compensate Philip Morris for about $2 billion because of the damage that Uruguay was causing to the investment situation. Now this arbitration process is in the procedural phase. They need the arbiters, the three arbiters, need to define that in short time, in the next coming weeks. And if the position of Uruguay succeed, that Uruguay is saying that this situation, Philip Morris did not comply the requirement for going to this arbitration, and that this is not an investment because Uruguay, because of the investment for Philip Morris, is losing 1,000 people by year in a country with 3.5 million inhabitants, and is losing 10 more times money that they get from the tobacco taxation from Philip Morris. So it's not a good thing for Uruguay, this situation. And this kind of bilateral investment treaty is quite similar in many aspects to the one that is being negotiated for the Trans-Pacific Agreement. So my concern and our concern from the Action on Smoking and Health is to raise awareness for the people negotiating here that this treaty for sure will be used by the multinational tobacco company for undermining tobacco control policies in all the 12 countries engaged in that in this negotiation, because this is a new strategy worldwide for these companies at this moment. That is all for me.
That's great. Peter, just for the.
Hi, everybody. I'm Peter with Public Citizen Access to Medicines Program. Have we shown them, by the way, the parasailers out there? Like, nobody up there right now, but these people keep like sailing past our window. It's kind of wacky. Okay, so I run Public Citizens Access to Medicines Program. Our main concern here is that in the TPP negotiations, well, we're fortunate in that there's actually been some leaked texts in our area, which is unusual in the overall context of the 29 chapters of this negotiation. But as a result, we've been able to see exactly what it is the pharmaceutical companies via USTR are demanding. And it's a series of measures to increase their monopoly power and increase their monopoly hold over new medicines, which are very important to save lives, improve health outcomes in a variety of disease areas: cancer, heart disease, HIV, and so on. And it's really probably the most aggressive series of proposals that we've seen from a trade agreement. Doctors Without Borders has called it the worst trade agreement ever for access to medicines. In this particular round, negotiators are discussing patents this week and copyright next week. So that's where your internet freedom will be on the line, for example, as Hollywood and the recording industry look for ways to clamp down on users and apply draconian punishments and even library and other fair uses. This week, we have essentially what's becoming a rather old dynamic of the United States sitting down with the other 10 countries in the negotiations and trying to press them into giving away access to medicines in a way that those countries have already rejected time and time again. The U.S. proposal on behalf of the multinational pharmaceutical industry has just faced tremendous resistance in these negotiations, but the real danger is that as great and courageous as many of the other country negotiators are, and as much as there's a strong civil society movement pushing against them, today, for example, we had a couple hundred people outside the hotel demonstrating, and a lot of folks were there from Peruvian patients networks telling negotiators not to trade away their access to medicines. In spite of that dynamic going on for a couple of years now, the essential problem is that this stuff is really important to the U.S. pharmaceutical industry and therefore important to our trade representative's office. And we expect there to be political pressure on countries at very high levels to cede ground, to sell out public health in this area in order to win their market access or their photo op with Obama or whatever else it might be. So Friends of Ours has been taking, and we'll be taking some meetings with negotiators, updating them on, our bits of intel. There's our latest analysis, and there's quite a few activities going on in Lima this week on it. We met with parliamentarians. We met with a number of officers from the Ministry of Health. We held a nice large catered lunch for the negotiators over by the seaside cliffs here, where Doctors Without Borders and a lot of the Latin American groups got to talk to them about patent evergreening and an impact study of just how much money we expect these proposals to cost Latin American health systems. And so it's been productive in all these regards, and the resistance remains strong, but it's a tough end game. We're gonna have to fight this very hard, and we need quite a bit more public support. And we should just have Reshma lean in here. This is Reshma from the American Medical Students Association. There's a good international medical student presence here as well, fighting a good fight with us. So, did I leave anything out?
No.
Coffee's good. The Pisco's even better. And the company's great.
Just one plug. If you're an NGO in the TPP countries, we can connect you with the Medical Student Association that's in your country. We have a lot of students that really want to become active on this issue, and they can really help in trying to kind of force political will towards public health rather than for industry profits. And we really want to connect them with other organizations that are working on this issue in your country. So please feel free to email Peter or me at pff@amsa.org, and I can get you in touch with the Medical Student Association in your country.
For more information on this issue or to see what's going on in the Lima round for constant updates, you can see citizen.org/access. Thanks.
Hey everyone, my name is Alana Solomon, and I am the trade representative of the Sierra Club, and I'm here to follow a number of issues related to the environment. So one of the chapters that we're following is actually a chapter on the environment. There's about 29 chapters in the agreement. We don't even know what all of the chapters are. We can guess about what 25 of them are. There's a number of mystery chapters going back to this issue of secrecy. But one of the chapters is on the environment, and this is one of the few areas where the United States actually is pushing quite a strong and ambitious proposal, which essentially would ban trade in illegally harvested timber and timber products, ban trade in illegally taken wildlife, and encourage and ensure sustainable fisheries management. The issue is that in this chapter, there's been very, very harsh resistance from all the other countries in the agreement, really pushing back on the notion of a strong and binding environment chapter, and are looking for something completely aspirational, which we are really concerned about. So we'll be meeting with environment negotiators and trying to get a sense of where the key issues stand and whether this chapter would be legally enforceable like all of the other chapters in the agreement. The other issue that we're following closely is the investment chapter that others have spoken about. So where we think the United States is advancing a strong proposal on the environment, we are deeply concerned that other of their proposals, including their proposal on investment, stands to completely undermine any potential positive outcome we might get on the environment. So we've heard a little bit about some of the egregious cases against from U.S. multinational corporations against other countries, including the Peru case that the U.S. is filing, a U.S. corporation is filing against essentially the community in La Oroya. There's been a proliferation of other cases. This is when foreign corporations are actually elevated to the level of nation states and are granted the right to sue a sovereign government in a private international tribunal under the World Bank or under the United Nations over laws and policies that corporation argues hurts their expected future profits or hurts their bottom line. And a proliferation of these cases now, there's been over 500 of them in existing free trade agreements against 95 governments, and many now directly attack policies to protect our air and water, transition to clean energy, and to put new regulations in the fossil fuel industry, for example. So just to give an example of one case that was just filed under NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. There's a Quebec in Canada recently put in place a moratorium or a timeout on fracking or on shale gas development underneath their St. Lawrence River to study the environmental impacts. And there's a US oil gas firm that didn't like that timeout. So they decided to bring a case under NAFTA, suing Canada, threatening to sue Canada for $250 million, claiming that Canada had expropriated their right to mine under the St. Lawrence River. So these are the type of cases that we're seeing. The investment negotiations officially start tomorrow. All the negotiators are here, and we're going to be pushing for, a complete overhaul of the investment rules. But we know, in fact, that a lot of these rules have already been agreed to that we're deeply concerned about.
Quick housekeeping question. As questions come in on the chat room, if you could hold on to them so that we can then take them all sort of at once towards the end and then indicate who you're directing a question to. And now Yorgos, you can come over and talk about the labor chapter.
Hi, everybody. I'm Yorgos Altinzis from the International Trade Union Confederation based in Brussels, the biggest international union body in the world, representing 180 million workers worldwide. The reason why we are here in Peru, like in many other rounds before, is because we've observed that trade liberalization leads to lower job quality, a rise of precariousness of jobs, and largely to informal economic activity. And that's because small and medium enterprises operating within the supply chains and outside, of course, are under immense pressure to reduce prices. And when this pressure is on, then the environmental protection and standards are suffering, the labor standards are suffering, and of course, these companies, as being in the informal sector, are not paying any taxes. But what is more frustrating is that the multinational enterprises are at the same time employing armies of legal experts and tax experts in order to avoid taxation. In a vicious circle, then they repatriate the profits, so there's no reinvestment of earnings. There is very low developmental impact there, and those profits then are moved into tax havens. There is another chapter in this agreement, the TPP, the Financial Services chapter, that seeks to further deregulate the financial markets, which would create a lot of causes that, as we've seen some years ago, had led to the financial crisis. So more causes are going to be there for new crises in the future. The way we see that trade could create somewhat what we call inclusive trade, or gains that would be enjoyed by everybody, would be if the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement would have a strong labor chapter which is enforceable based on core labor standards of ILO, but not only. And through collective bargaining, workers would be able to to claim a fair share of the wealth created through production and trade. I'm sure all of you have seen the latest trends in income inequality. There's a huge divergence between the labor and capital share of the gains and of wealth. But I'd like to underline here that the trade unions are not here only for the labor issues. We are very much concerned about the issues of access to medicines. Peter has talked about that much better than I could. And of course, the environmental protection, as Ilana said before. Another issue would be the government procurement. We would like government procurement to be still a national competence and be used in order to create jobs, decent jobs locally. Also investment. What can I say about that? We cannot really understand representatives of governments that supposedly represent their nations. They're coming here to lightly give up on national sovereignty to non-transparent mechanisms that huge. There's a nice. There was a jurist letter on that as well some years ago with very serious people making serious allegations about the ethics and of the whole scheme. And of course, the access to public services, because services are being liberalized, so that is coming hand in hand with the access to medicines and many other issues. So we'd like to see your questions in a while, and we'll get back to you. Thank you.
So that's everybody who's here in the room. Let me just wrap up by saying, to pick up from what Yorgos was saying, so we've covered several different issues and categories that relate to particular chapters in the TPP, which none of us have seen. Nobody in the United States Congress has seen. Very secretive, as Melinda described. But I will also point out that there are a number of other so-called sensitive issues that are being discussed downstairs, 5 floors below where we are now. Many of those issues relate to agriculture and market access issues that are not covered in any of these chapters. So separate and apart from the 29-ish chapters that are controversial and that are being worked out in secret behind closed doors, 5 floors, as I say, below us, there are other important political issues or decisions that will be made later on this year. So, for example, the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, my organization, represents nearly 40,000 dairy workers throughout the supply chain in the dairy industry, from hauling bulk milk to processing and all the rest, both in the United States and in Canada. There are countries here, and Japan, soon to join these negotiations, who have very, very different views on how much dairy market access should be agreed to under this agreement. As I read in New Zealand newspaper, New Zealand is a big dairy exporter, not too long ago, that if somebody wanted to, monkey wrench or to mess up these negotiations, there are these sensitive issues like dairy, like rice and sugar and other agricultural issues where the negotiations may break down. So we have our interest in these substantive chapters, but we also have an interest in the old discussions that animated trade debates around market access around particular products. So all of us here in this room, and many out on the street, and many of you who can't be here for this round of negotiations but would otherwise, are tracking as much as we can, given the lack of transparency and the enormous secrecy surrounding these negotiations, tracking as much as we can the places where, the moments, the leverage points at which these negotiations may break down. Those of you who've worked on trade for a while know that what happened with the World Trade Organization after the battle in Seattle and under this Doha round has been a certain inertia, lack of momentum. And that could very well happen with the TPP if we all do our jobs right. The aspirational deadline to complete these talks is later on this year in October in Bali. And most, I think, people who handicap these negotiations believe that that is indeed an aspirational deadline and that it is quite possible that that will get moved. In the meantime, we have enormous domestic debates in order to weigh in and to have national conversations about the implications of this agreement. In my own country, in the United States, we have the fast track fight, don't we, U.S. Activists? You know what I'm talking about. The fast track fight this summer in the United States Congress, and that's something that we're going to have to win. So we've got a lot of work to do down here in Lima and obviously back home. And in the meantime, I think maybe I'm just going to take a look at some questions that are showing up on the chat. Question for Peter, and I'm going to do a little bit of up and down. Question for Peter, do you know what's been going on at the IP negotiating table re patents pharmaceuticals this week? This is from Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie. Were there actual negotiations on text, or were they continuing discussions from Singapore where countries were supposedly explaining their existing IP regimes, or has the U.S. been forced on holding bilaterals to intimidate countries? Good question, Stephanie. Here's Peter to answer that.
My, what a startlingly good question.
Yeah, right?
You know, well, a little of both. So the United States has fallen to a place where rather than simply putting text forward and trying to move things forward, there's maybe a little bit of a divide and conquer strategy going on where so we've had this resistance from many countries for a long time. Now we have the United States trying to take countries aside bilaterally, multilaterally, small groups saying, okay, so what can we, what are you ready to agree on here, given what you're trying to get from us in other areas and so on, in order to try and break the solidarity. So that's happening as well as negotiation on text, and you know, we think it's all a bit of a bullying tactic from the U.S. and the fact that you have such uniform opinion against these proposals, which do nothing for innovation but just strengthen the sort of the monopoly hold of companies. That ought to be respected. That ought to be a sign that a different set of rules should govern in the decades ahead. Not sure if that suffices. There's, of course, certain level of discretion we have to guard.
Let's see if we can scroll and see other questions. Other questions? Here's Arthur from the CDC saying that Yankees who are interested in monthly TPP organizing calls, maybe you all can see the text as they come up. There's a link. Thank you. Arthur's typing right now, in fact, according to this. How do you scroll in this?
Mike, can I just interject here for a second?
Yeah, who is that?
This voice, I should start my webcam. Okay, so I'll just jump back in here because we took apart some of the questions, or we kind of moved them off to the discussion notes on the side. I don't know if you have that file in front of you, but there was a good question.
Yes.
About tactics, so that maybe this is something for Emma, I'm not sure, or anyone in the room, but about tactics that Peruvian activists are using to engage communities against the TPP.
Great. Thank you, Stuart. We do see the questions as you've reformatted them over to the side in the discussion notes. Emma?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the question. TPP is a complex subject for Peru and for local communities, but we are trying to show all the risk about signing this type of agreements. And we are taking, for example, Doran case, like the example that the government of Peru have to take. And we are trying to send simple messages about this risk and how these type of agreements affect the rule to protect other kind of rights. For example, the rights of health or environmental rights, for example. So we have started a big campaign to show this risk about access to medicines, and we have prepared a video, and we have a press conference, for example, because we have to show to public opinion what are the risks about these type of agreements. And now we have an example that we are not talking about imaginary risk. Now that we have an arbitration and all Peruvians were going to have to pay, for example, $800 million for this arbitration about the Iran case. And it's not, we are sure that it's not going to be the first case. So we're trying to take this emblematic case to show all these risks. And we're trying also we have do a publication also to show the details of the case. And we are involving also of kind of networks. We are trying to show like a platform of civil society in Peru to try to have more impact. We have started the campaign and we'll continue to show what all the risks, because TPP, and we have experience before with the free trade agreement with USA. We have started a big campaign also. We're talking with congresses in Peru. So we're doing a lot of advocacy work and the campaign videos. We are talking about also meetings. Yesterday we have a big seminar with to show to public opinion all of the kind of risks, and to have foreign foreign people here to support our cause. It's really important. It's to show that it's not about Peruvian civil society concern. It's like a global concern, and that's the strategy, to show that there are a lot of risks and that we have to take care, and we have to take actions to avoid that agreements like that take place in a country like Peru.
I'd like to just jump in real quick as well, just to folks might be interested, particularly if you speak Spanish. That's no negociable.pe. So no, it's no negotiable. All of that, the rights are not negotiable, and there's a really excellent social media campaign that they're promoting, and it's really trying to get petitions that will be sent to the President Humala, and with the goal of what they were talking about is they're going to have medicine bottles with a symbolic pill for each signature that they're able to collect, and they will deliver those to the president's office as well. So they're really using different social media outlets, really creative. I really encourage people to look at the video that's on that website. It's really exciting.
Let's see what other questions. Stuart, are you still there?
Yep, I'm here.
Sure. So I'm just looking through the 7 questions that you've put together. So we can go through them kind of quickly, I think. The next question that I saw is that does civil society have access to the TPP talks? That's an easy one. No. No. Okay. All right. Okay. Number 3, Melinda, this one is for you, and it's related. Wouldn't U.S. have to make TPP text public to pass implementing legislation? In fact, I'll take a crack at that one as well. Again, so what I said earlier to the U.S.-based activists is this. While the TPP negotiations may go on into October and even longer if we do our jobs right, there will be an opportunity this year, and in a legislative context, to weigh in on this very question. Because of the secrecy of the negotiations, which is unprecedented for all of us who've been working on this for a long time, there was an enormous amount of anxiety, frustration, even anger on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. about this process, and about the fact that the big business lobby and the United States Trade Representative and some Republicans and Max Baucus are all pushing very hard for fast track a trade negotiation for, it's called TPA, Trade Promotion Authority, but lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. It's fast track trade negotiating authority, and we're against it. The way to channel that frustration, I think, about the secrecy in these negotiations is against that vote. At this point, the administration is asking the Congress to give them the authority, a blank check, to finish these negotiations, and a second set of negotiations that will have subsequent webinars on with respect to the TAFTA, the Transatlantic Free Trade Agreement. The way to focus that is to get your congressional delegations to vote no on that FAST Track, so that there's some semblance of transparency and accountability, really, towards the end of this debate. The implementing legislation comes after that, the FAST Track, in complete response to the question. But I think that our job as activists, and certainly for all the US-based folks on this call, our job is to make sure that the secrecy that we're experiencing down here, now in its 17th round of negotiations, that secrecy is manifest in our opposition to fast-track trade negotiating authority.
And I would just clarify, perhaps the question also came to the fact that I said that they've signed this memorandum of understanding that they won't release it until 4 years after. My understanding is that you're correct in that when the implementing legislation is put before the United States, there will be they will publish the completed text, but they will not for 4 years after that be able to publish any of the negotiating text that arrived at that. And then if the talks fall apart, we won't see anything until potentially 4 years after. So that's what the agreement was. But it's very important what Mike just said, which is that they want Congress to approve fast track before they have any chance to actually see what has been negotiated. And it's important to note that important members of Congress, like Senator Wyden, who is the chair of the subcommittee on trade negotiation or international trade in the Senate, introduced a bill because he was not able to see the text, nor was his security cleared staff. So we're seeing more and more anger coming from members of Congress who have actually supported these agreements in the past, given how secret the process has been. And that's in the US context and different, but we're hearing a similar story from other countries as well, that there just has not been, that it actually is one of the most secret negotiations that to date this far.
Can you see?
Let's see. Is Jose Mujica considering getting out of ICSID? I don't actually. That's for you. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm glad
Yeah,
someone knew what that meant.
It's for you.
Where is that? Sorry. Getting out. Not up to the moment. There are some Latin American countries considering that, but up to the moment, I haven't listened to something from Mujica in relation to that, unfortunately.
President of Uruguay. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
For all of those who don't know.
Yes.
Okay, great. What court is the fracking case filed in, Alana? Do we know?
That's under the World Bank Tribunal ICSID. But right now they have just, Lone Pine has just filed its notice of intent. And they actually say that they want to settle the case, which means that they expect that maybe Canada would or Quebec would give up on its moratorium on fracking, which we of course hope is not the case. So the next step will be whether an actual panel is established. I should also mention that Sierra Club and Council of Canadians and a number of organizations in Canada have actually just launched a petition calling on Lone Pine to drop their case. We've already received several thousands of signatures calling for this. Lone Pine has their shareholders meeting taking place right now in Canada.
And then, let's see. Wait, I don't see any. Is there something else, or did I get them all?
Stuart, I'm hearing you.
Okay, I put that last one there. I don't know. Someone asked that on the chat. The big question.
How do we stop the TPP?
The easy one.
Yeah. How do we stop? Right.
The easy one.
The easy one. Now, we're working on that now, all of us together, to stop the TPP.
Yorgos wants.
Okay, Yorgos.
Well, I think
Yorgos now.
apart from bringing the civil society all together, I think a good way to do that is to Doha-lize
Right.
the process. That's a new word. It comes from the experience we had in the Doha. Empirical experience, says that if negotiations of a trade agreement are taking 2 years, it's more probable that they're going to take 10 years. And if they take 10 years, it's probably they're never going to be finished. So, for example, in a country like the United States, you have a state that they make a lot of pork, and another one dairy, and another one they have the financial services or whatever. So if we could mobilize civil society to talk with congressmen in the different states of the US and in different areas of all the other countries, of course, and put as many as red lines as we can on different products, on different issues, on different regulations, then this will make the negotiations take longer time. And, well, I mean, hopefully one day, maybe they would be abundant. That's one way. I think we are all on that, but maybe there are more ideas,
Well,
right?
I have another word, which is not Dohaized, but FTAAized, right? Because the Free Trade Area of the Americas was actually very similar to the TPP. It was a large agreement, negotiations among 34 countries throughout the Americas, and that's also what happened. There was a lot of civil society in all of the countries organized, had strong red lines, and they weren't able to complete the negotiations.
And actually, when the text became public, then all these negotiators and governments came under severe pressure. So that's why they failed. And another way also is, and part of what we're trying to do here is to educate or provide material at least to negotiators, especially from developing countries, and show them that the interest is not to agree with this and this and that. So then they have this documentation, research, studies, international organizations, papers, or whatever that might be, and they can use it in the negotiations. That's more of a strategy of what was the multilateral investment agreement more than 10 years ago. So probably I'd say along these three lines, there is a strategy on that. Yeah.
Good. Well,
we have more questions.
I think that's one of the last questions we had from the list. I'm gonna maybe ask anyone on the list if they did have some extra questions or one or two, we could get to them. Otherwise, it's 5:55, and I think this has been a very successful webinar. I think we've dealt with tons of information in a really short amount of time. So unless there are other questions that could pop up here, look at that, that's beautiful. Solidarity, right? Unless there are other questions, then we could probably wrap up.
We can do the chant that they were doing outside.
They did.
Peter was leading it.
La salud
no negociable.
Los derechos de los obreros
no negociable.
El ambiente
no negociable.
La justicia
no negociable.
La soberanía nacional
no negociable.
Abajo con el TPP
no negociable. ¡Viva!
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much. And thanks everyone on the who participated. Thank you, Mike, very much. We've just to let people know, we have recorded this, and we've told the presenters we're going to try and get it up online as soon as we can when we figure it out. But thank you so much for the participants, the questions, the organizers, and everyone in Peru. We wish you the best of luck this week.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Thank you, everyone, for signing on. We'll give you a debrief when we're done.
Excellent. Okay.
When we're left Peru. So we're signing off.
Let's sign off.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.